Welcome back. So tonight we're going to give you a three-dimensional analysis of the tragedy that occurred on the 6th of August. We're three-dimensional because here with us in studio we have a flight simulation that's going to try to mimic some of the conditions that were present on the day. And so for that we have Nanaya Ontrakwa, who is a lawyer by training but also a flight enthusiast who does flight simulations to help us in a discussion around the conditions and what happened. We also have Colonel Festus Abuaji, who is a retired colonel of the Ghana Armed Forces, who's a security analyst, who has a lot of information about what's been happening. But also joining us is a former Air Force pilot for the Ghana Air Force, a former commercial pilot as well. He flew with Virgin Nigeria, an aircraft accident investigator, which is quite important for this discussion, and a professor in aviation and aerospace sciences at the North Dakota University. He's in the person of Professor Kwesi Ejekum. He is going to help us appreciate some of the dimensions and questions that must be asked. So I'll go back to my seat and start with Colonel. Colonel Festus Abuaji is a security expert. Colonel, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
I also have a professor of aviation and aerospace sciences, who's a former Ghana Air Force pilot and a former commercial pilot and aircraft accident investigator, Dr. Kwesi Ejekum. Doc, thanks for joining us all the way from the US.
Thank you very much, Bernard, and it's a pleasure. I hope it would have been under favorable conditions, but we find ourselves in this fix, and my deepest condolences to the bereaved families. I pray that God continue to comfort them and strengthen them in this challenging time.
Thank you. And we have lawyer Nanaya Ontrakwa, who is very enthusiastic about aviation and has also learned how to simulate flights. He's here to help us in the analysis to give it some richer context. Nanaya, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, Colonel, I think we need to agree on what we all know so we have a good base. So I'm going to say a few things, and if I'm wrong, you correct me. So, of course, it was a week ago today. The announcement of the casualties was around 2:20 p.m. We do know that the aircraft was a Z9. It left the Air Force Base at 9:12 a.m. We understand that it was expected to land in and around 10:02, 10:03 a.m. at the Lenkley landing base. We are told that the crash point was around 13 kilometers to where it was to land. We are also told that it crashed into a mountain which is around 750 feet high.
725.
725 feet high. We are also told that it took off normally. Some say 14 minutes after it took off, it went off radar. You will need to explain that. Are those enough facts we know, or what else is factually important in this conversation?
Well, like my colleague professor did, and as I've been doing, let me express very sincere condolences, first and foremost, to all the bereaved families. At this moment, I'm not sure how they are bearing with this tragedy. And then, of course, to all of us as Ghanaians.
Yeah.
I thank you for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure.
Now, one of the things I want to chip in is that the Z9s, at least part of the fleet of not less than 4, probably 5 or 6, were first acquired in 2015.
Okay.
Basically for the inspections of our energy lines.
Okay.
There are trouble gas lines or gas pipe and transmission lines and so on. Somewhere around 2019, the Air Force decided that the fleet must be based at Takoradi to be used for training and for what I think they call the bridging training between the Z9s, the Augusta Bell, and the M17s, that the Ghana Air Force has. So that's the home of the Z9 fleet. Now the Z9 is originally manufactured by China And the people who understand the industry will say that it's based on the dolphin model. So it's like India buying Mercedes technology and then remodeling it in India and calling it Tata. But they are basically Mercedes technology.
Correct.
So China did some modifications, I'm not too sure, but at least it's got a twin engine and a few more, technological additions and so on. On the 2nd of August, this particular Z9 did a medical evacuation from Takoradi, where it is based, to Accra. I assume that by that time, the government had requested the Ghana Air Force to provide what we call the VIP mission on the 6th. Whatever the case is, the Z9 remained in Accra, i.e. the crew, 3 of them, all of whom have come or had come from Takoradi, stayed in Accra. There are a few things I can say about where the captain lives or lived that I think I don't want to share on this platform. I think the professor will explain to us that, at least in the Ghana Air Force, you don't get up and get into a cockpit and fly any plane. There's something we call a task order. And that task order will come from the Air Force headquarters.
Okay.
Basically, it tells you what the mission is about. In this case, we know a team of 5 government officials, including 2 ministers. Where are they going? The destination. When are they supposed to be there? For instance, they might not tell you, and they don't need to tell you when they want to leave here. Those are what the professor will explain are aeronautical decision making. But the Ghana Air Force will provide some basic information to enable the pilot, the captain, to now sit down with his co-pilot and then plan the flight, the estimated time of departure, and when it leaves, that becomes the actual time of departure. Okay. The path, the flight path that it is going to take, taking into consideration certain features, obstacles, terrain features, and so on.
Okay.
Taking into consideration the weather forecast, from civil aviation or from GMED or whatever it is. All of that will be factored into the planning. So some planning took place. But as the simulation will show, and as Professor I think later on explain, the area around the Ghana International Airport, Kotoka International Airport, is a controlled airspace. It doesn't belong to the Ghana Air Force. They are co-tenants. In other jurisdictions, they would have shared the management of the air traffic. But in Ghana, it is strictly the civil aviation. So that plan will need to be certified by civil aviation, which controls a flight until it is out of the radar zone. And then, as I've been explaining, normally helicopters fly under visual flight rules. Visual is eyes, as opposed to instrument flight rules, which the larger planes do. When they climb, they attain the right height, then they go instrument. So the human factor there is very minimal. In this case, the captain and his co-pilot constantly need to be aware of where they are per the flight plan. You know, or we know, as you said, subject to correction, that 14 minutes after takeoff, 09:26 thereabout, the helicopter went off radar. Professor will explain a bit more. But off radar doesn't mean a helicopter has crashed. It simply means that it is at a place where, owing to certain factors, like terrain features, let's say the Nkoko area, for instance, let's say the Atiwa area, depending on the position of the aircraft relative to Kotoka, the radar might not pick the position of the plane.
Okay.
So we need to understand that the plane did not come down 14 minutes into the flight. But now we know that it came down, as you said, 13 kilometers from the designated landing point, the Longley Airport, and about 3 minutes flying by the helicopter.
While you do that, can I tell Nanayao to use that information to set up his flight so that we can get a sense of what you said? So, expected time of takeoff is actual time of takeoff.
Time of departure, ATD.
Is 9:12 a.m. From the Air Force Base, and the destination is the Longley landing
at Obuasi.
So Nana, what do you?
Sports field.
What can you use that information to plan something?
Yes, we can.
You can.
Yes.
So show me how you're going to do that.
Right. So at the moment we are looking at the map for flight planning. Okay. Yeah. So we are looking at Kotoka International Airport, which is where the mouse is, circling.
Yeah.
And then a little bit to the right is the Air Force Base. Let me zoom in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll pick my departure point from here, set as departure. And then I've already set my destination, which is Longley. It's a stadium, actually. Longley Stadium. So let me zoom in so that we can look at it. See that it's actually a stadium. Okay. And then I'll zoom out. Now I've plotted my flight plan in here. Departure and arrival. Okay. Departure is Kotoka. Arrival is Obuasi Longley. All right, so I'm being told that the winds at 190 degrees 14 knots, distance 99 nautical miles, which is about 59 minutes.
Okay.
Depending on the speed, the aircraft, and everything. So with this information, I can get going. Now,
but two quick points. Your aircraft in this simulation is a G2.
It's a G2 Capri,
not a Z9
at all.
So that means that it's a different type of helicopter.
Yes, it's a smaller helicopter.
Number two. Are you using the same weather conditions for the day or a different for today?
Yes. So this simulation gives me the option to pick live weather.
Okay.
So I have picked live weather. So it is simulation. It will not be the same.
Okay.
But close to.
Very, very important.
Yes.
So live weather for the day.
For that day.
I see.
And also, what I want to point out is that from the simulation, my flight plan shows me that I'll be going over this mountain ridge.
Which is where
exactly.
So can you show it clearly? So this is where it found its end.
Somewhere
the dark blue space.
Yes. The Dampier Range Forest.
Dampier Range, which is 13 kilometers from Obuasi.
Yeah, roughly.
Wonderful. Yes. So work on this. Let me speak to our pilot. And Doc, I really thank you for staying on the call. I'm quite impressed with your background. But I'm interested in the aircraft accident investigator part of your work. I understand who a Ghana Air Force pilot is in your former job. Commercial flight pilot as well makes sense. Professor of Aviation and Aeronautics is great. But who is an aviation accident investigator?
Oh, yes. So the interesting part is that before that, I would like to say a big thank you to Ken Abuaji for making my work very easy. And obviously, that's an A in my career resource threat error management class. Excellent work.
Thank you.
So I was actually trained by the Ghana Air Force, which, let me be honest, in Ghana, if you are looking for the most experienced and competent, well-trained aircraft accident investigators, it's the Ghana Air Force that trains them. And we actually even assist the AAIB. A lot of people don't know the core AIB, a lot of the, when it comes to accident investigation, we are co-opted. When I was in service, did some work, I know my colleagues still there, they are co-opted to help the AIB with incident and accident investigation. So that being said, I would want to say that in aircraft accident investigation, it's purely a data-driven and empirical-based, it's almost like research work, okay? Conjecturing and making statements that are not steeped in facts, it's not helpful. Because what the investigator, when I put on my investigator cap, actually what I'm doing is that I want to cut out every bias, just like you're doing a research work. You want to be able to collect the data, be it from the field work, be it from the crash distribution, be it from the energy dynamics, be it from how the aircraft impacted the ground, to interviews, to, in this case, factual data or objective data that we're getting from flight data recorder, cockpit voice recorder. And at the end of the day, you're also going to look at documentary analysis. As an investigator, you look at the aircraft maintenance record. You are going to look at organizational factors. Within the Ghana Air Force, resource allocation, things like level of supervision from, higher command, and how it trickles down to the various squadron, affecting their policies, procedures, and the practices. You are going to look at the safety culture. You are going to even look at things like the human factors, okay? As pilots, as human beings, we call it like the psychological aspect, how we think, even when we are engaged in a task. So this normally will come through, interviewing colleagues, interviewing family members to know, hey, what was the, state, the mental state of even the crew members within the last 3 days, within the last month, prior to conducting the flight. And then we also look at the medical records. We want to make sure that fitness for flight, whether there were some, or some medication that potentially could have, incapacitated. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it could impair, their capabilities and their performance, reaction time, decision making. So once the accident investigator has built this plethora of data, wow, we sit down, we triangulate, then we come up with findings, okay? And then out of the findings, we start looking at, building hypotheses. What is most plausible, what is improbable based on the data that we've collected. And then we start eliminating. At the end of the day, we are left with, ones that we think is solid. And so, just to let the audience know, there is no single cause for an aviation accident. Let's get that true. Aviation itself is a very complex coupling of systems, very complex systems, and a failure or deficiency in one of the systems, okay, could influence the totality of our operation. So once we've done that, we sort of come up with probable causes. Remember, I'm using the word causes and contributory factors, and all of that, is solidly backed by the data that we collected. And then from there, we can make inferences and make recommendations for improving safety. So it's a very lengthy process. It's a very detailed process. People should just relax because we want to get it right. There's no rush, to come up with an accident investigative report when you've not done enough due diligence.
Wonderful. So you said a lot of things. This is a factual process. You need data from the flight data recorder, cockpit voice recorder, documentary analysis, interviews, standard operating procedure. So it's very elaborate. We have to give it time for it to work. This is great. I'll come back to you shortly. I wanted my simulator to tell me whether he's taking off. Just give us a sense of the ambience, since you are here to help us. Of course, we are not saying this is exactly what happened. This is very important. But we believe that this will give a better sense of understanding of the issues. Okay, so can you walk me through where you are and what you are trying to do? All
right, so as of now, we are at the Accra Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And we've started our engines.
Yes.
The next thing we'll do is to ask Control Tower for permission to, taxi first and then take off.
Okay.
So once we get that approval, we will start to taxi.
Okay.
Now I want to make a point here that this helicopter doesn't have wheels or tires.
Okay.
It uses skids.
Okay.
So that's one difference from this one and then the Z9.
So the Z9 has wheels.
Yes.
So the Z9 will probably move on the ground before
we'll
it takes
taxi on the ground. So if I want to taxi, I'll have to lift off because I cannot go on
That's the first difference. And this is a bit smaller than the Z9.
Yes, much more.
So it's possible the Z9 could have gotten there much faster than your 59 minutes.
Absolutely.
Approximately.
All right. But take off nonetheless.
Yes, so we'll go back inside the cockpit.
Okay.
And then we'll request permission from Tower.
Wow.
Okay, so we see here, right, this is Aviation, that's the name of the aircraft. It's also my call sign. So we've been given clearance to taxi to and hold short of runway using taxiway Mike cross runway 03, you know. So basically we need to follow this instruction to the runway.
Okay.
For today, because this is a helicopter, we will just take off from here and then head straight to Obuasi.
Wonderful.
We will notice that Tower will insist, even from simulation, that it hasn't given us clearance, but we will ignore for now.
No, wait for them.
Okay.
Wait for them.
Okay.
Procedures might
It may take time, but you keep doing what you're doing.
Okay.
Whilst
All right.
I take some, I ask my next question to
Okay. All right.
to Doc. Doc, the kind of information we would need, or the investigators would need to do a thorough job, seems a lot. Is there an average period of time that these things usually take, or it depends? Because you mentioned about 6 different things which are needed. How long would this typically take before a conclusion can be arrived at?
Yeah, thank you very much. So let me just explain to the listening public that if this were a civil registered aircraft, okay, then a lot of times the organization and the management and the investigative process will be under the International Civil Aviation Organization Annexes Standards and Recommended Practices 13, okay, Annex 13, Aircraft Accident Investigation. And what does is that from the onset of the accident, when the investigators or the investigator in charge gets to the scene of the crash, and the site is managed and they start preliminary site analysis and data collection, nominally within 30 days, they are supposed to come up with what we call the preliminary findings.
Okay.
A lot of times, these preliminary findings hinges on what we call factual data.
Okay.
So like I said, that one would nominally include what was the purpose of the flight, what type of aircraft was involved, crew information, whether they were, their qualifications, their proficiencies within the last 30 days. And then we'll look at their flight hours, we'll look at factual data, how many fatalities, and then we'll look at weather conditions. I can see Nanayao is conducting a simulation.
Yeah.
In actual fact, when we are recreating this scene or doing a recreation now with AI softwares, after we've retrieved data from the flight data recorder and the CVRs, we are going to use the exact data that was as parameters that were recorded in the flight data recorders. We'll put it into the software and then use the same Z9, and then we'll fly the same profile until the last known point where the mishap happened. And so the factual data nominally it's what is grounded in fact, air traffic instruction, weather conditions from GMET, and then the investigator in charge would just brief the public about these things, and then also highlight the fact that the investigation is ongoing, and hopefully in a year's time we should be able to come up with a final report, or if we've not completed the investigation, we give an update. In this case, it's a military aircraft. And so even though from my experience as an aircraft, as the investigator, safety officer in the Air Force, a lot of our procedures, it's akin to Annex 13, but we are not bound, that the 30-day briefing that we are nominally supposed to give from the ADREP report. The Air Force, nominally, like Kanabuaji rightly stated, there is going to be a board of inquiry that will be set up. The preliminary investigation team will do the field work, they collect all the data, and then that data will be handed over to the board of inquiry, which will be set up with well-seasoned experience, I would say competent people from various backgrounds, flight operations, aeromedical, maintenance, maybe some aspects of operational control and command. And then in this case, we are even most likely inviting participants from outside or third parties just to give some credibility to the investigation. And so for us, that time bar is not necessarily applicable. It will be up to the board of inquiry to decide as and when they want to maybe give an update. And mostly that update might not necessarily come to the public. It might be to maybe military command, because during the investigation, if we find out that, hey, we've identified something that is of, safety critical to the rest of the fleet, maybe to the Z9 operation, or to, it's a management factor that needs to be addressed. That will be communicated to higher command. It will trickle down to the wings and to the squadrons for immediate changes to maybe some of our procedures.
Okay.
Other than that, probably we'll gear on to the very end of the investigation, and then what is, I would say, appropriate based on the security classification for the public will be released.
Quick question. Some people have said that because this involves the Air Force, the investigative team must include non-army people, for want of a better expression, because they feel like it must be, I hear the word, more broad-based investigation. Is that a point worth thinking about?
Did you say army people?
No, so basically Air Force. So the people doing the investigation are Air Force people.
Yep. Yeah, because we have what we call the Ghana Air Force operation standards and the Ghana Air Force safety standards. Okay, so that is what governs us. Just like in the civil side, they have the Ghana Aviation directives, which is steeped, in the Act. So we also have our standards. And that is what empowers the higher command to set up the board. Like I'm saying, nominally, you might not have civilians taking part in the investigation or the board. But because of the national prominence of this particular mishap, I will not be surprised. And it's been a practice, because the last investigation that I was part of, we had civilians who are experts, helicopter experts. They were invited to join. And that sort of gives a level of credibility. I mean, we don't want a situation where people insinuate that we are trying to hide stuff. And so it's appropriate that even though it's within the ambit, the gambit of the military to do what we normally do. In this case, I will not be surprised if we have third parties being invited to.
Thank you. I'll come back to you. The flight is progressing steadily. Colonel is also going to tell us a few things about what has been reported. It's been reported, for example, that the black box was found. He will explain that we have to be very careful what we even call the black box. And then there are also some key questions we should be asking and what we should expect from the investigation. All of that and more when we come back. This is the point of view. We're trying to bring you a 360-degree analysis of the tragedy that occurred on the 6th of August that took 8 noble Ghanaians. Stay with us.
In Ghana, West Africa, the mornings are somewhat, if not for the perfect companion. What a good day to start. Work is always effective with NASCO home appliances. Good vibes only while you wait. The feeling hits very deep. Any jepa, I want NASCO fie. NASCO, bring home happiness.
Welcome back. The point of view tonight is trying to bring some more clarity around the key issues which surrounded, of course, the fatal accident that occurred exactly a week ago, or the air incident. I'm not sure I can call it an accident for now, because that will be prejudicial. I have Colonel Sabaji in studio. He's a security expert, served in the army for many years. I have Dr. Kwesi Ejepong, who is a former Ghana Air Force pilot and an aircraft accident investigator. He also teaches and lectures and researches in aviation and aerospace. Nanayo Antrakwa does flight simulations as a very expensive hobby. Before I come to Colonel, Nanayo, are you in the air now? Where are you?
Yes, we're in the air. Let me just pause and show you where we are. Okay. This is simulation, so we can pause in the air. So this is the cockpit. I'll just step outside and then we'll look. We just took off from Kotoka International, the Air Force Base, which is behind us, so you can see the scenery, some of the buildings we can identify. Now we've turned course, we are heading 290 on the, heading indicator, and then we are flying straight to, it's a straight flight path to Obuasi.
Let me come there and ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
So it looks like, to the untrained eye, it looks very dark, very cloudy.
Yeah.
Is this in the morning?
This is in the morning, yes. So we are simulating what it may have looked like.
What it may have looked
on
like
that day.
Okay.
So just go back inside the helicopter. So here it's fairly okay to fly.
So for the first 15 minutes,
it's okay.
Everything's okay.
It's okay.
Now, Colonel, there was a point around, I think one of the media houses reported that the aircraft went off radar after, I think, 12 or 14 minutes. You're saying that should not be an issue because of the way our aviation space works. So it's not an off radar that's a problem yet, the so-called 14 minutes off radar.
Well, my understanding of the information that some of our service that if the helicopter went off radar 14 minutes after departure, 0926, it went off radar. Where was it? Was it around Atiwa? Was it around Nkoko, where we have mountain ranges?
It couldn't have been.
What was the condition of the weather? Heavy rain, lightning, whatever it is. Any of these, environmental factors could affect its detection by radar. But more importantly, as Professor said, the empirical evidence is that off radar, it did not crash anywhere in the eastern region. It crashed in the Ashanti region, 13 kilometers to the landing point projected, and about 3 minutes flight. So it was able to fly for 27 minutes.
After going off radar?
After going off radar. During the 27 minutes, you and I know southern Ghana. It would have flown over several towns and villages. If it was encountering an emergency, like the Nkoko one which happened on the 11th, obviously, the pilot would have found a landing spot to land. The assumption is that because there were several towns along the path and it did not land, off radar would not mean that it was encountering an emergency. I'm using empirical evidence.
Off radar
means the radar cannot detect the position of the aircraft.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it is encountering a problem.
Not necessarily. And I'm using empirical evidence that because we know that the crash happened in the Dampier forest, which is 13 kilometers approximately from Obuasi, and 3 minutes flight, it had flown for 27 additional minutes after it went off radar. During the 27 minutes, where was it? Was it over Jasu? Was it over Konongo? Wherever. There are several towns with football parks, open ground.
So you're saying based on those facts, the off radar shouldn't be an issue yet?
I think we should disabuse our minds that because it was off radar, it had encountered an emergency issue. Because that would not necessarily be the case.
That's important because some of the conversations have been around, of course, the time the Ghana Armed Forces communicated to the public officially, it was somewhere beyond midday.
Yes.
But we know that the fact that they are communicating to the public at 12 does not mean that that is when they realized that gone off radar or had an issue.
Not necessarily.
Yes.
But let me come back a moment because Professor mentioned the state of mind and the competencies of the crew.
Yeah.
If we zero in on the captain, Anala, is that right?
Anala, that's
squadron leader.
Yeah.
He's got 13 years experience flying a pilot.
Okay.
Before he passed, he was the most senior, most competent helicopter pilot.
This is a fact?
It's a fact. Professor will tell us his grading was category C.
Okay.
Certified for VIP flights.
Correct.
And he has been flying VIPs in helicopters.
So this will not be a new thing he's doing?
Is to disabuse the kinds of Ghanaians that some people say, oh, maybe he was not competent. Look, squadron leader Category C, helicopter pilot, is different from Air Marshal Bequin, who was flying fixed wing. They are completely different types of equipment. So, last point is that he had been trained in aircraft investigation at Cranfield University in the UK.
Anala.
Since his training, whatever that year was, he has been going back to Cranfield. The white man, Oyibo, Muzungu, has been inviting him every year to come and deliver aircraft investigation training.
So some of this will be important in the data
he was very competent.
So I'm saying that what Doc, some of the things you're saying will obviously feed into the data that Doc is saying. Because these are facts.
Whether he was competent
enough
competent.
and all of that, so that they know in 30 he was in good standing. And
among the three crew,
okay,
he has 13 years.
Yes.
The flying officer has 5 years.
Okay.
The flight sergeant, the sergeant engineer, has 14 plus.
Okay.
Collective experience, as Prof will explain. In this, your Ghana one, your collective experience is how many years you've done. How many years?
You added.
That is the
so
level
over 30,
of competency.
Over 30 years, if you put that together.
It's 32 years plus.
Yeah.
So all of them. Sergeant as an engineer doesn't mean he must hold a master's before he's an engineer. You see what I mean?
I get it.
In the aviation system in the US, you can have a sergeant who is an engineer, but who is very, very competent. He doesn't need to be a master's or PhD.
Preliminarily, we shouldn't be worried about competence issues.
Ghanaians must throw away that stuff that maybe they were not competent.
Okay.
You see what I mean? Because he's a squadron leader.
Good.
They expected.
Let's deal with the question of the let's deal with the question of the F9, and I'm going to go to because of course it was reported in the news that the black box had been found. But you explained to me before we got on air that technically what was found cannot be called a black box.
Technically,
yes.
What this Z9, this particular Z9 model, originating from China has, is an anti-crash recorder.
Anti-crash recorder.
The anti-crash recorder is technically the flight data recorder.
Okay.
It does not include the cockpit voice recorder. That is what the Z9 has. But nevertheless, whatever data is there, recorded, the flight parameters, everything, is on that device. And it's very, very important that as soon as possible, whether the Chinese come here and use modern technology, to connect it to China or send it to China, or we go to the US National Transport Safety Board, wherever it is.
Quick point you're saying. This Z9 has a flight data recorder, not a cockpit voice.
Anti-crash recorder.
Anti-crash recorder. My point is, do we know this as a fact that because it's possible they could have retrofitted to add some recording device, or these are standard?
So I'm speaking on the sources that I have.
Okay.
In fact, very, very highly placed. But I don't want to give the level, otherwise everybody will know the identity.
No problem.
But be that as it may, the other things we know. That
but the information in that anti-crash recorder
would be similar to the flight data recorder, all the parameters of the flight.
But it will not include the interactions in the
that
aircraft.
May not be included on the anti-crash data recorder.
Let me ask Doc about F9, because I'm sure you've done some research on F9. Again, Z9, forgive me. Doc, any thoughts on the Z9? There's even a whole discussion around a history of Z9s in Africa. I don't know if you've seen that story. And some of the high-profile crashes involved. We are told that this Z9 has an anti-crash recorder, not a cockpit voice recorder. What can you say technically about the Z9, which will not be prejudicial to the investigation? What can you tell us generally, Doc?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know the source of the data for your analysis on the safety of the Z9 helicopter, because I've also done mine. And in terms of fatal accidents, if incidents, yes, but in terms of fatal accidents, probably if you want to use that metric, in my opinion, it looks like the Z9 stands out to be relatively safe to other platforms, because I've done some checks as to fatal accident involving the Z9. Well, just putting that aside, I think we are having this whole argument about whether the black box, technically there is a reason why we call it black box, but from a from a technical perspective, what we call the black box is actually the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, which is integrated into a crash-resistant box. Because remember, an aircraft that is involved in a crash, we have very high decelerative and accelerative energy at play. High G's, some more than 25 plus and minus G's. And so you want to place these very important recorders of aircraft performance data, metrics or parameters in a capsule that will withstand the high G forces, as well as the extreme thermal conditions that will prevail, especially after a post-crash fire. From my preliminary analysis, I know that some form of data recorder was on board this particular Z9, and I want to put it on record that it's one of the testaments of safety improvements, because remember we had the Etiwa accident, and one of the challenges that the Ghana Air Force had was trying to recreate the accident because those did not have cockpit voice recorders or flight data recorder. So one of the critical recommendations was that subsequent platforms that to be acquired should have these, and thank God that was done. So these Z9s had it, and it's going to be very helpful in the investigation, because now it gives us real-time factual flight performance data, like I stated earlier, the altitude, the location, the longitude, latitude, or positional records, the speed, other instrumentation, avionics, capture, parameter captures, and all this will be pertinent when we are trying to recreate the flight from takeoff to its last position before the crash. I also want to highlight on the flight following aspect. I think you were asking the question about the helicopter going off radar. Listeners should understand that this particular, and most helicopter flights in Ghana, I think what he stated that they operate under the visual flight rules, VFR. Under the VFR, if you file a VFR flight plan, nominally you get flight following, and what the radar or approach control does for you is that it provides you advisories. Okay, provides you maybe separation advisory, provides you with weather and those pertinent information, but there's a limit. Flying from Accra to Obuasi, obviously there's going to be a handover at a particular checkpoint. Normally it's about 60 nautical miles. You are handed over to Kumasi. Kumasi will give you what we call the meter, which is the real-time data for you to know the weather conditions around where, like Obuasi area. Remember, that is Kumasi weather. It is not Obuasi specific weather. And so most helicopter pilots, and I've talked to some of them, including some who are colleagues, it's very challenging to fly the helicopter. Unlike we fixed-wing pilots who have the comfort of, very good automated systems, we fly very high. Helicopter pilots, it's under challenging conditions. There's a lot of vibration. In terms of psychomotor skills, they are using their hands, their feet on the pedal, the cycling, the collective. They are looking out, because remember, it's a visual flight rule flight. So you are looking for landmarks. They are supposed to stay away from clouds, because it's VFR. Normally we call it a 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's 1,000 feet from the cloud that is below you, 500 above, and normally 3 mile visibility. And inadvertently, if helicopter pilots are flying who are supposed to avoid clouds to be able to see the ground, and because of their low level of flying, it is not implausible that at certain points in flight, especially if you're using secondary surveillance radar, like in Accra, highlands and others, line of sight could get them off the blip. And so that is why now we have what we call the automated dependent surveillance broadcast, which is satellite sort of generated to be able to help with positioning report. So, I mean, really talking about getting off radar,
it's not such a big issue. All right. I wanted to do two things. You've set off. I think you should get closer to.
We are in that.
You are in the line of There's is it relevant to ask whether it was misty? Because I remember when our reporter interviewed some of the farmers, I think a couple of them said they used some word, esu, or they used some tree word. Esi. They said there was mist.
Fog.
There was fog. Okay, so where are you now?
So we are close to the range. Sikaman is to our left, Brofuyedu is to our right. Straight ahead, after crossing the mountain, we'll be going to Obuasi.
So the mountain is in front of you?
It's in front of us, but because of the cloud cover for now, so I cannot simulate fog in this example. But we have a cloud which kind of obstructs visibility. So just to simulate some kind of obstruction to visibility. As of now, we are about 4,600 feet, in the air. And we've paused just to look at.
Is that not too high for a helicopter?
Which one?
It's fine, 4,600.
No, that's
fine.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between clouds and fog when you are in an aircraft? In terms of how it affects the craft?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first point is visibility. Both of them can obstruct visibility. But in the cloud, it's quite unpredictable. You could have, it could be bumpy and all of that. But for the fog, mainly visibility.
And is fog generally lower than clouds? Fog is generally lower than clouds.
I think fog, principally, are these fine particles of water droplets. A cloud could be electrically charged.
Yes.
Which is why sometimes we have lightning and so on. I don't know, but Prof probably could add a bit more.
Yeah.
And fog, as you're saying, is normally, somewhere close to the surface of the earth.
So since you are using visual something, you in this position, you are going to come down a bit.
It's already in there.
So what are you doing?
I've changed the weather settings a bit to a storm, and right away we can't see much. So I'll go back to the cloud, and then we'll descend. Okay, so we see the difference between.
So storm is if it was a storm, we wouldn't have seen anything.
We wouldn't even go through.
So they'll generally ask about the weather and they'll check the weather for the day in the data that Prof is talking about. So that information will be available. They will know. They will know what weather it was at that particular time. So that is a fact that they will have, correct?
Part of the empirical evidence that we have is what the mayor of Kumasi a couple of days ago said, that he communicated with my namesake, Dr. Samuel Abuaji.
Yes.
Suggesting to them.
Who was on the plane? Who was on the
he was
the second
fortunately part of the departed.
Yeah.
So there was communication. But
so they will definitely take the recording of that conversation in their data.
Not necessarily, because Dr. Abuaji might have been somewhere. This is a cockpit flight recorder, not the cable.
No, I'm saying that the mayor of Kumasi said he called him.
No, he called Abuaji, who was in the aircraft.
That's what I'm saying.
But that conversation might not have been picked up, assuming that.
Okay, so he called him.
Yeah, he called him. They spoke.
Okay.
But I'm explaining that after they spoke, whatever information the mayor gave to Dr. Abuaji, if Dr. Abuaji gave the information to the captain, it enters the terrain of the aeronautical decision making.
I hear you.
The captain is the only one who will decide whether to take the suggestion coming from, what do you call it?
But do we know what the mayor told this?
He said he suggested an alternative landing point.
Which means that the conversation...
So if the initial was Long-Clay Sports Stadium...
Hold on. The conversation was about difficulties on the flight?
That we don't know.
Us?
The mayor didn't put it in that context. But that we suggested, or he told him that they could land, or they should land somewhere else.
I see.
That information could be corroborated, by the pilot, from the Obuasi Ashanti Gold runway, which has air traffic control.
I see.
And not rely on what, the mayor or any other.
And the mayor said this on record, that he spoke to Abuaji.
But that's what I saw on one of your sister stations.
Let me just ask, Prof,
but
is
technically...
Is it regular for somebody to call somebody flying a helicopter and talk to him? Is that? I didn't know that was that easy. Doc,
Prof.
Yes. Can I come in?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so basically a lot of this, that's the essence of an aircraft accident investigation. You know, like Colonel is saying, there is purported to have been a call to one of the occupants on the aircraft who spoke to the captain. I don't know how. I've flown VVIP, I've done VVIP flights, and I know how sometimes we get what I'll term interference from the passengers, you know, because of who you are flying. But what I would want to put out there is that because it's VFR, or as some are speculating, special VFR, where it means that now the visibility requirement is nominally below the 3 statute mile that is required for VFR condition. That's, it's flying is a constant act of, evaluating what is happening around you. We call it situational awareness. What is happening around me? What information am I getting? How is it going to impact the safety of my flight and my future status? And so if they were in a VFR condition, clear of clouds, clear of deteriorating visibility condition, and then most likely probably they were descending. Okay, you are descending, and then all of a sudden, we call it inadvertent flight from VFR condition into IMC conditions, instrument meteorological conditions, okay, where there's restricted visibility because of the misty condition. What it could happen is that, the human physiology is such that the perception, how we perceive things, especially in a motion, in a vehicle that is moving around, your senses, we call it the vestibular senses, can be affected because what you are seeing and the sensation in your body, it's almost that it's diametrical, it's opposite to each other. And so that is why we train pilots to be able to focus on their instrument, because the instrument will give you the appropriate orientation. If you tend to look outside whilst you are in conditions where you have restricted visibility, like in a misty condition, there is a likelihood that you might become disoriented, and your inputs is going to be affected because you think that you are climbing, you are pushing down, you think you are descending, you are pulling up, you think you are in a bank to the right. Meanwhile, you are supposed to be straight and level, and a lot of aircraft accident, both fixed wing general aircraft, general aviation aircraft, and helicopters especially, have been involved in what we call control flight into terrain, where the aircraft is positively under the control of a well-qualified, trained pilot, but inadvertently enter into conditions where they become, they become spatially disoriented, they lost situational awareness, and then they crash into either water, into terrain, or into a tower. It's one of the leading causes of fatal accidents worldwide, what we call CFIT. And so at this point in time, I've been talking about the misty conditions or whatever it is. That is going to be a focus of on the investigation as to, hey, how did these external variables, what we call contextual complexities, influence the decision-making pattern of the crew? We want to understand what was the pilot thinking. And that is a very complex thing, and it takes a lot of diligence, examining the data that is available, and to be able to come up with the appropriate hypothesis.
All right. What I want Anaya to do for us is to get closer to the area.
Okay. So we are actually, Bernard.
Okay.
And we've dropped to about 1,600 feet. We're about 4,600. So right away you can see the difference in visibility from the drop. We're out of the clouds.
So this is much clearer.
This is much clearer, although it is not so clear. So I just want to move to clear sky so that we can have a sense of what clear, clear
so
sky. So
if it was absolutely clear, it would have been this, which you can see everything.
You can see that right in front of you is the mountain.
But from all that has been said and what we know for the day, it was not clear. But we don't know the level of.
Right.
So that is what they will find out. Right. So they will know from the data for the day the exact amount of visibility impairment, for want of a better word. But you are using fog. So this is where we are.
It's using clouds.
Clouds. Okay, clouds. The question I have is, you are 1,600.
Right.
The mountain or the mountain they crashed into was 725 feet.
Yeah.
So that's another
the impact point.
The impact point.
That might not necessarily have been the highest point of the range.
Exactly.
Are you able to tell us the highest point on this?
So it can be checked, but from the simulation, okay, I'm doing 1,600 feet. If I continue straight at 1,600 feet, I cannot go over it. You see, just by looking at it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, you know, you can see it right in front of me. Going straight means I'm going straight into the mountain. I'll have to go up.
So the mountain itself was much higher than 1,600 feet.
It depends. So this is simulation.
Okay.
Okay. We need to get the exact.
But you're saying that with this 1,600 that you are,
yes,
using the same, if you went straight and didn't go up,
I'll go through the mountain.
You're serious about that?
Yes, yes. We can.
So it means that they need to tell us the exact height of the mountain as well, which is easy to verify.
The general area of Obuasi, Obuasi probably is like who?
Surrounded by mountains.
Yeah, surrounded by mountains. The highest peak of the hill ranges is 1,250 feet above mean sea level.
Okay.
I don't know whether this is mean sea level or not.
Normal sea level.
But there's a difference between the height from Sikamine to the top, and then measured from Accra, for instance.
Okay.
You know. So that is where there are a lot of unknowns.
These are the known unknowns.
Yes.
We know that we have to get that information, but we don't know what the information is.
Then it looks like it didn't crash into the mountain. It crashed into the top of a tree or trees. You see, and there's a difference.
People said.
Well, the eyewitness account is also part of the investigation. Because if you go to the site, and there is evidence now that some of the trees had lost their branches. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
If it crashed on the ground, unless maybe a flying rotor or engine part, went up there. But the eyewitnesses say that it almost cleared the treetop
before it finally.
But then it crashed into the treetop.
I see.
And if you like, fell. Maybe on this point, to try and clear one of these conspiracies about somebody emphatically saying that the helicopter crashed mid-air. Mid-air means that it was in the air.
Yeah, this was said by a member of
Parliament.
Don't
mention the name.
No, we want to be clear. That is not. This is a senior person to say this. Yes. And you're saying that couldn't be possible.
The first thing is that where is the evidence?
There's no evidence to that.
The evidence that I have, which is, call it empirical or recorded, or is BBC. And I've begged of our Ghanaian media that when BBC files a report, they have done a lot of fact-checking. So BBC is saying that the eyewitness told us, in quotes, loud noise, and in quotes, a bang. He didn't say that a bang and then a loud noise.
Why is that important?
Because a loud noise can only be made by an impact.
Okay.
You see it?
And then the impact can
The bang invariably is an explosion, like a boom.
So loud noise before bang.
Before bang suggests that there was an impact and then there was an explosion. But assuming, be that as it's been, assuming that it exploded mid-air, we must see the top of the trees bent. That will be part of the evidence, that they will be looking for. And that is why I feel a bit concerned that some of the parts, including the bodies, were moved from the places where they should have been.
Yeah.
Because once you move, the parts, whether human or otherwise, it becomes very difficult, as he said, to try and figure out how the plane contacted the treetop, at what angle, where the direction in which the parts were flying, how far they flew.
Yeah.
Because if they flew 400 meters, somebody had gone to collect the part that was lying at 400 meters. You see, but it's something that we cannot do anything about, because as Ghanaians, we are too curious.
Yeah.
We have a culture of going to accidentize. If it's petrol tanker, collect fuel. If it's beer, collect beer and drink. And so
all of that
even take personal belongings.
The data gathering.
Which is very, very bad.
All right. Doc, Prof, I think one key question a layman would ask is why the aircraft would have lost elevation. Because I think it's very clear from what we've seen that it was not flying at 4,000, obviously, because the mountain is 725. So clearly, something must have caused it to lose elevation. Whether it was a deliberate loss of elevation to see better, or whether it was a forced one, is what they have to determine, correct? So piecing the information together, will this be a useful question, Prof?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And so, like I always say, that is the focus. That's one of the important reasons why the investigation is ongoing, or we are gathering evidence. Obviously, if you look at the flight profile, if you are flying from Accra all the way to Obuasi, and it's being suggested that they were about 13 miles to where they were supposed to land. Obviously, you cannot be at 4,000 if you want to land at the Lenclay Stadium, or it's not plausible. So, which means that most likely they were in the descent phase, descending from 4,000 all the way to be able to have what we call a continuous descent, stabilized approach. And most helicopters, the limitations with helicopters is that, unlike fixed wing, where normally we will fly to an airport which has what we call an instrument approach, which is well planned, takes into consideration the elevation, takes into consideration the profile of the place, the risk. A lot of helicopters go to places where there is no control tower, it's uncontrolled, it's remote area, and the pilots have to visually sort of brief an approach where they will determine how they will probably circle, locate the field, and then establish a stabilized glide to land. And so in this particular case, for me, in my opinion, it's not surprising that they were at that altitude, because obviously they were descending to land. The question is that I think Nabwadi was talking about, initially I mentioned that the preliminary investigation will look at the distribution of the wreckage, the energy dynamics, what we call how did the aircraft break up? And just to add to what he said about the conspiracy theory that most likely somebody shot it down, the aircraft blew up in the air. As accident investigators, everything is on the table. And so one of the key principles of investigation is that we will look at it. We will look at sabotage, okay? And normally if an aircraft, there is an explosive device on it and it breaks up in the air, most of the time the wreckage itself is telltale. It's distributed over a wide area. And even the parts, we are able to use forensic analysis to detect what we call trace elements of the explosive. And they'll take it to the lab, they'll do analysis to determine. And that will be helpful, because once we establish, in this case, I'm not saying that is the case, but if we were to establish a case of sabotage, then the investigation moves from the safety investigation to a criminal investigation, because that's criminal. But in this case, they are still looking at it. The investigators will consider all of them. If it's due to a mechanical maybe failure that led to an in-flight or breakup, the flight data recorder would capture the loss of parameter data at that particular point. The cockpit voice recorder, if they had something like that, there is a telltale acoustic pattern for in-flight disintegration. In this case, the helicopter was not pressurized, but hey, you still capture some of the breakup, and the acoustic signal will be there. And so everybody should please calm down. Like I always say, we have professionals, they are collecting the evidence, they will be looking at all this, everything is on the table. Right. We shouldn't rush to judgment. So what I can say about the altitude is that it's reasonable that they were in the descent phase. And then, we've talked about the visibility. So if you are from a visual condition and inadvertently you get into instrument condition, that's poor visibility. Obviously, most helicopter pilots will try to weave their way out of it and find maybe a hole where they can establish visual contact with the ground. That's normally the practice within the helicopter world. But then the point is, what happened to the crew? You know, because sometimes when you get into, diminished visual condition after you've been in clear weather or clear visibility condition, you could have what we call illusion or spatial disorientation. It is not because they are not good pilots. It is because of the physiology of the human body between what we are seeing or what we are sensing and the perception, how our mind processes the signal that we are sensing. So that discrepancy brings in the illusion and can lead to spatial disorientation, which affects how the pilot their input, and then could eventually eventually let to establish that this was a controlled flight into terrain. So we have to find out what transpired and what was happening to the crew for them to get into this situation. That's the essence of the investigation.
Thank you, Prof. We'll take a short break. When we come back, the simulation pilot has a question for you. Then he will try to land. In the simulation example, hopefully he will land safe. Here on the point of view tonight, trying to make the significant interesting. It's one of the maxims of journalism. We are storytellers, so beyond asking the hard questions, we've invited a flight simulator pilot to just help us get a sense of the discussion. So I have a colonel or retired colonel, and of course, a former Air Force pilot who is now a professor of aviation and aeronautics science and an aviation accident investigator, technically helping us understand what questions we should be asking and what the investigation should be doing. But my guest who is sitting behind the simulation cockpit has a question for Prof. So what's your question for Prof?
Right. Prof, in simulation, the altimeter settings has a role to play in terms of having accurate altimeter readings. So I'm just wondering whether it is the same in real flight. Assuming I have my altimeter settings wrong, could that affect my altitude
perception?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nanaya. That's a very important question. I mean, as pilots, anytime, I think I started by talking about the meter, which is a real-time hourly meteorological data that is provided to pilots. And most of the time, they are specific to the aerodrome or to the airfield. In this case, this was an off-site, landing. They are not landing in Kumasi. But hey, most of the times, it's Kumasi altimeter setting that will be provided to them. And that could be tricky because the highlands around Obuasi and of course the height above terrain, the altimeter setting sort of has it will determine the level of clearance that you could get. And so that is why it is very important as part of the flight planning that, hey, when you are giving an altimeter setting, most of the time you get maybe the data of a place that is as close to the airfield as possible. And that's almost one of the reasons why a lot of helicopter pilots, they try to establish visual contact before they get into a remote field, because it might not be the same as me flying a 737 to an airfield where I'm giving altimeter setting. I set it in my altimeter and it sort of is coupled to my flight management system. Helicopter pilots will have to do with maybe a remote or maybe the nearest airport altimeter setting, or better still, some would set what we call the QFE, which is like the altimeter setting that allows them to estimate height above the ground directly. The good thing is that some of these helicopters have what they also call the radio altimeter, which measures directly your height above terrain. And so with a combination of this, it sort of gives a better situational awareness as your clearances within that area. And of course, you would have briefed what we call the minimum sector altitude. So the minimum sector altitude provides some clearance over the highest obstacle within that area. And these are all important things that needs to be briefed as part of the threat error management from the part of the crew that influences decision making. So yes, if you put in the wrong barometric setting or altimeter setting, you could have discrepancies which could lead to your inability to clear terrain, and it could potentially lead to control flight into terrain. There is a lot of accidents that have occurred because pilots or crew members set in the wrong altimeter barometric pressure, and because of the discrepancy, they ended up in terrain. So that's a valid one.
So, Nanaya, where are you now?
I'm just approaching Langley Stadium. That's a bit to my right. If I can control with one hand, that's it.
So Langley to your right?
Yes.
So how many kilometers are you from Langley?
Oh, I'm not.
You are very close.
Yes,
so
very close.
I want to know at what distance you can start seeing Langley, because obviously if it crashed 13 kilometers to the site, obviously you can't see.
You won't see.
He's now cleared the hill range.
Yes, he's cleared the hill range. Now he's going to make a safe landing.
Yeah. Hopefully.
We pray.
Hopefully.
And I see. By the way, you're saying your helicopter is different from the Z9 because the Z9 has wheels.
Yes, that's one, visual characteristic, and it's more. The Z9 is more powerful than.
By the way, does the Z9 land just like this lands, or
the principles are the same? The principle of helicopter flight.
So my question is, you are saying that in takeoff, if it has wheels, it taxis on the ground before it lifts
also
up.
land and taxi.
But can it? So in landing, does it taxi to land, or it just lands?
No, we just
both.
land. So I'm doing that right now. I'm trying to, avoid.
What we are seeing from here is that helicopter flying is more complicated than aircraft plane flying.
It can taxi.
Yeah.
If it's a helicopter landing point,
it just goes
there
straight.
it needs to come, hover, and then drop on the edge.
All right, we're on the ground.
Oh, we've landed.
You've landed.
Yes.
This was what we were hoping
It was
for.
a hard landing.
Can I chip in?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, so talking about helicopters, obviously this one has kits. Most helicopter pilots, because of terrain avoidance, if they are going to a remote area, initially when they get there, they will do an overflight.
Yeah.
Okay, because basically they are looking out for places where there might be masts, telecommunication masts, or so they plan the approach profile. So they will normally do an overflight. Even those of us, when I was flying the Fokker 27, we go to Navrungo. We do an we will do an overflight to inspect the field, and then we plan our approach. And if it is such an open place, then they could come in high, and like Abwaji is saying, they'll do a hover to landing. But that also has its own risk, because if the place is dusty and you are doing a hover to landing, it could blow enough dust that you get yourself into what we call a brownout situation, which also, it's another risk that helicopter pilots face. The investigation that the accident that occurred in a Duke room, semblance or something like that, was associated with it. And so a lot of times, it's more like you establish a nice profile, descend, in such a controlled manner, so that you'll be able to land and you'll be able to avoid the obstacles. So that's what
just a quick question.
I hope my helicopter pilots will not give me a C for explaining how they conduct their approach and they land.
All right. Kenneth, do we know when this aircraft was manufactured, and is that important in this discussion?
Well, I know from sources that I've spoken to, the first 4 were acquired during the first tenure of the incumbent president in 2015. But it looks like this Z9 is not one of the 2015 fleet. It's a recent acquisition. Now that I'm here to know how old it is. But even the 10-year-old helicopters, Prof will tell us, are relatively okay if they are well maintained.
So that's a big if.
So this particular one will be much newer. And in all likelihood, it will have other instruments that are probably better than those that we have on the original.
So Prof, will the maintenance schedule of this helicopter be part of the data? Because he gave an important caveat. He said if it's even 10 years old, in terms of buying, that's not from when it was made, right? Then the if that they have to find out is whether it was regularly maintained, correct? As part of the data they need. Prof?
Yes, so like building up on what Colonel rightly stated, you hear this, oh, the aircraft was manufactured, 1980, a whole lot of things. In aircraft, operations, it normally has to do with maintenance, whether you are following the recommended maintenance routine or regimen that the manufacturer has specified, and you are complying with airworthiness directives that have been issued by the regulator. So long as you follow the strict regime that is established for maintaining the aircraft in an airworthy state, yes, that is it. The only problem is that the older the aircraft, the more maintenance that needs to be done on it, and the more maintenance that needs to be done on it inadvertently sometimes introduces some elements of human error that we try to avoid. That being said, this helicopter, that's one thing as investigators I would want to find out. I don't have the information. Even in the United States, because of a lot of incidents with control flight into terrain related to helicopters, now the FAA has issued a new directive for all of them to have what we call enhanced ground proximity warning systems, or terrain awareness warning system with GPS sort of updates for their data in terms of the geographical data. It's real-time updating. What this does is that it maps the terrain in which the helicopters are flying, because remember, they fly at low levels, and so it alerts the crew if there is imminent closure with terrain or with water or with mast, and it helps in ensuring what we call situational awareness for the crew. So that is something I would want to know, as part of the investigation, whether this particular aircraft had an enhanced ground proximity warning system or a radio altimeter that is coupled to it, and of course the enhanced updated terrain data with the tools, because these are technologies that improve safety, especially for helicopter flying. And so if they had this on board, now the question is, if obviously there will be alerts, and that will also be captured in the cockpit voice recorder, if they had the alert which was telling them that terrain, pull up. What happened? How did the crew react to it? I cannot, sitting here in the comfort of this office, second guess whatever the crew did, because that's a little bit of hindsight bias. But I believe the data, when pulled up and reconciled together, should be able to help us reconstruct what was happening in the cockpit. And like I said, with other information, have a picture of the mindset of the crew when they were faced with all these variables.
Let me give the last word to Colonel. Because you've followed the discussion from its inception across, what are your key takeaways, and what's your advice to the public as the investigation begins, and as we also obviously mourn their loss in Ghana?
I think in this conversation we have focused a lot on the aeronautical side.
Yes.
Now, post-impact response is where there is a lot of tension now.
Yeah.
All schools of thought as to how the different stakeholders responded. One of these key stakeholders is the Ghana Armed Forces.
Yeah.
My only advice is that when you are moving between spaces, you factor in time. So between Kumasi and Obuasi and Sikaman and the impact site, it's not quantum physics that instantly you are at both places at the same time. All of this I'm factoring into the paper that I'm writing.
Okay.
From the time that the Ghana Armed Forces were told by the Air Force Base, 30 minutes later, have you seen this flight? Another 30 minutes, 1 hour later, we're in distress state. The team that left Kumasi were actually moving to Obuasi. Along the route, they had a correction from Accra or from the media, because they're also listening to what was going on in the media space, that it's not rather Obuasi, but it is Sikaman. All of this change of direction, given the nature of the road network, would take time. We know that it didn't happen, as somebody said, in a savanna zone. It happened on a hill range. Remember, the term is hill range. It's got probably a crest, or a ridge line. And we saw in the picture that virtually you're only moving in that direction. If you made the mistake of turning or going left, you are going to slip down the range. Then there is this idea of the Sikaman to whichever the main road is, that the computer describes as proximity to forest reserve. Now, any road proximity to forest reserve is not a good road. It's not even third class.
So your point is that it could have taken a lot of time for the army to get there.
That explains one of the reasons why the military got there shortly before 1400 hours. Now, between 1000 hours, when the eyewitness saw it, when did the eyewitness convey that information, assuming, to the assembly member? What did the assembly member do with that information? Where did he report that information? Why didn't they call 911 or whatever the number is? So when you get to know the point where a substantive authority got the information, that is when you begin to see when they should have moved and when they should have arrived at the impact area. From now, from Kumasi to Sikaman is 50 to 55 kilometers. Remember, it's mixed road. So it is not all asphalt or all gravel or whatever. It is a combination of many things, and the graveled road could even be full of potholes. Then you needed another almost 1 hour from Sikaman village, now entering the cocoa farms, clearing the cocoa farms, and getting into the forest reserve, and starting to climb on a steep slope. So these are some of the factors.
All right.
I've narrowed it down. 1 hour 45 minutes is road movement. I heard you sometime yesterday saying that there is also preparation time. All battalions in the Ghana Armed Forces have what we call the red platoon. They sleep at the guard room, ready to move. But when they are ready to move to Obuasi or Sikaman, was there a vehicle available? Did they have sufficient fuel?
Wow, lots of questions.
Were they going to now look for rations to take? Because they need soldiers move on their stomachs. They need to find the food. So whatever preparations they made, the start point for their movement should be taken from there. The ambulances, I know, followed later.
Okay.
But they got there before the bodies arrived at Sikaman, for instance. The GOC was at the peak, at the crash site, after the CO had arrived. It is not true, it is not accurate that the regional minister got there first. It is the 4 BN elements who got there first, followed by the GOC, followed by a regional minister. The pictures that we are seeing with villagers moving up and down, the videos have been edited. They are not continuous video streaming. So it gives a sense that the civilians or locals were all over the place. But even if they were, they had a lead time of 1,000 hours when they saw or somebody saw the impact to the 4 o'clock when the military arrived. Now 4 hours is enough for local communities who are not very well, it's not educated, but didn't have awareness about reacting or responding to accidents, to start contaminating, the crash site. That's the reality that we have.
I see.
And all of us, if there is any blame, indeed it's too early to try and apportion blame.
But obviously all of that would be in the, if it's not the investigation of the crash, obviously the response inquiry.
The response is a critical part.
So that's also possibly
and
either
there isn't only one stakeholder.
Yeah.
There are several stakeholders. Ghana Armed Forces, disintegrated or disaggregated into the Army and the Air Force in Accra, the FOB at Obuasi, for instance. The Ghana Police Service, Fire Service, Kumasi, the Regional Administration / Regional Security Committee, National Security Police, all of these are stakeholders who are part of the emergency response. Or
we have to leave it here, and obviously, as you've said, we've focused a lot on the aeronautical part of things, but I believe it's giving some insight to the conversation. I want to thank my panel, doctor. He's actually a professor, but I like his aircraft accident investigator title more. But he's an assistant professor in aviation and aerospace sciences, North Dakota University, a Ghanaian, Dr. Kwesi Ajekum. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for the insights you brought. Correct. There are 3 of us on the set, actually. And of course, Nana Ontrakwa, another other day as well. And it's also, this is your hobby.
Right.
And I think it's been helpful to us in seeing what happened. Of course, this is a very grim subject.
I'll come for tutorials.
Yeah, but at least we decided to do this not to give any more pain to family members, but to also give the public better understanding, because with tragedy, understanding is part of the healing process. So we did it in good faith. It's not because we want to remind anybody of the pain, but we believe that it's important to ask the right questions so that when the investigation is done, people will get closure, which is why it's important for the speculation to stop and for the media to also fact check information that's put out. We've done our best on that, and we'll keep doing what we can. So thank you, Nanaya, as well. And thank you for watching. We wish all the departed souls essentially grace for them to rest in peace. And we also send our commemorations to the family. My name is Bernard Avle. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.